Welcome to this DW Business Special, where we'll be looking at Europe's cost of living crisis. As energy prices jump to levels not seen for decades, we'll ask how the continent's most vulnerable people are coping and what needs to be done now to prevent extreme hardship this winter. Now, it is worth pointing out Europe has been battling inflation since before the war in Ukraine. That was due to consumers beginning to spend again as pandemic restrictions were lifted. Prices were also rising because of supply chain issues in China, where key areas are still in lockdown. But the war in Ukraine and the resulting pressure on gas supplies has pushed an uncomfortable situation into a full-blown crisis. To discuss this topic, I'm joined by two guests. My colleague Emily Gordine is in London, where she's been reporting on the UK's cost of living crisis. Also on the line, we have Michael Heise, Chief Economist at HQ Trust. He's been following economic developments in Germany especially closely. Welcome to you both. Starting with you, Emily, we've seen headlines about people in the UK, especially the elderly, facing a choice between eating and heating this winter. Are things really that grim? What kind of stories have you been hearing?
Yes, Kate. And the only answer to that question is absolutely. It is as grim as it's been reported on. I was talking today with a cafe owner. They've been around. That cafe has existed for over 125 years. And they face an increase in energy bills per year up to £94,000. They have absolutely no idea how they're going to do it. And ultimately, what they face is closure if they don't get any help. And if you look at the average household in the UK, they are facing approximately energy bills of approximately £3,500. That's triple as much as what it used to be a year ago. And for many families, that is just an absolute blow. And of course, you have to also then take into account that these rising energy prices are then fueling again inflation. And last month, inflation in the UK hit about 10%, and it is expected to rise even more. So it is a question ultimately for families in the UK, especially for poor income, of low income families, of whether they will go and buy food or whether they will heat their home in the winter if it gets really cold. And to top it all off, really, is that over the last 2 months, ever since Boris Johnson resigned, there's been a relative inertia on the government side of it. And people are just genuinely worried of what's to come. And I've spoken to a few people here in Essex, and let's see what they have to say.
It's getting very tight, you know. Every time I go in the shop, something's gone up by another 80p. So I'm just buying what I need daily, really. And goodness knows what the future. I'm glad I'm my age and not young growing up, because I worry for the grandchildren, you know.
Already I'm going round and round with my energy supplier. I have been for a few months to try to keep my direct debits static, so that they don't just increase them beyond a price that I can pay.
The cost of everything is going up. You go to the market and everything is like twice or more what we used to pay. So we're really feeling the impact because salaries are not rising.
Food, definitely, I'm having to be more careful with that. When I go out with my son, I'm a single parent. I'm a co-parent with my son's mother, but oh, can we go do this, Dad? It's like, oh, not really, and you feel like you're sort of robbing him of his childhood a little bit because you want to take your kids out and everything, enjoy themselves, but you kind of can't.
A lot of really worried people there on the streets of Essex. And of course, this is a situation playing out in towns and cities across Europe. I want to turn to Michael in a moment, but first let's get a quick overview of the inflation situation across Europe right now. The Baltic states are on the front line of the problem, with prices there more than 20% higher than a year ago. But inflation is, of course, also soaring in countries like France, Germany and the UK. Switzerland at over 3% is a little lower, but only relatively speaking, that number is still higher than it's been in 30 years. Michael, as we saw there, this is a problem being experienced across Europe and a huge challenge for governments when it comes to policy. What kind of measures should leaders be putting in place to make sure people get through winter?
Yes, well, it is a huge challenge, and the outlook is pretty bleak, as you said, for the UK. That's also true, I would say, for Germany and other European countries. I think the most urgent action of policymakers is to devise packages, programs that compensate especially low-income families and households, at least partially, with respect to the soaring energy bills. Many people cannot really manage the increase in energy bills in the lower income segments, and there needs to be strong compensation on that side. That will probably be done in Germany. The details are not out yet, but it is, to say that too, not an easy task to target the support according to income levels, and also to keep savings initiatives to keep giving incentives that people use energy efficiently. If you just reduce taxes on energy, for example, you will reduce the price, but you will also incentivize people, maybe not to save as much as they otherwise would. So it's quite a difficult issue, but this is where the priority needs to be. And next to that, of course, you also have to look at the business, which is really being burdened by huge cost increases for energy, and by the need to change the energy mix in our economy. So this is a pretty big challenge also for the corporate sector, and also here the government needs to support.
The challenges are just so enormous. And Michael, as we know, Germany relies heavily on Russian gas. The Chancellor Olaf Scholz has been trying to reassure people that the situation is under control. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
All of this and many further measures have contributed to us being in a much better situation as far as supply security is concerned than could have been foreseen a couple of months ago, and that we will be able to cope quite well with the threats that we face from Russia, which is using gas as part of its strategy in the war against Ukraine. We have prepared ourselves, and that's a good thing to realise.
Now, Michael, that is meant to calm nerves here in Germany. What is your take? Do you think the government has the energy crisis under control?
Oh, good question. Well, what we have achieved is a reduction of gas imports from Russia that has been quite sizable, but there still, of course, is a large dependency on Russian imports. And this, of course, we don't have under control. If somehow the war escalates or Russia wants to retaliate sanctions of the West, they can basically turn off the tap, the pipeline with gas, and that would be a very, very large problem for Germany, not only for heating and electricity usages, but also in the corporate sector where gas is needed as an input for many, many products. So a shutdown would be a big issue for Germany. In that sense, it's not really under control. What we do have under control is, I guess, the income losses that people are experiencing. That we can set up programs, also given a fairly stable fiscal situation, we can set up programs that compensate people at least partly for these purchasing power losses. That I would say is under control, but the reliability of energy right now is still very much in doubt.
Now, in the UK, they are facing a rather different set of challenges. They are not quite as reliant on Russian gas there. Boris Johnson, though, he's also been trying to sound positive, suggesting that something good might actually come out of this energy crisis. Let's take a listen.
Of this catastrophe of Putin's war, I think good is going to come, in that Europe will wean itself off Russian hydrocarbons. We will no longer be vulnerable to his blackmail. And in this country, we will have greatly accelerated long overdue reforms and steps to become energy independent in particular by rectifying the damage we've done to our nuclear industry.
I want to put that proposition to both of you. Emily, do you think something good could actually come out of this mess?
Well, if Boris Johnson is referring to the return to nuclear energy or the renewed investment into nuclear energy within the UK, then I would strongly disagree with him, because it takes years to actually build a nuclear power plant, the one he is planning on building, and that's not going to solve any issues that we have right now. I mean, the UK population is suffering from a massive cost of living crisis right now, and something that will be ready in about 15 years is not going to help them at all. And if you speak to energy experts, then really the solution, or the only good news, or the only good thing that they could potentially see coming from this whole crisis is a turn to renewable energies. But if you're looking at the current Conservative leadership, the current leadership candidates who are vying for Boris Johnson's job, then it's not really looking good. I mean, Liz Truss, she wants to invest in fracking and in further extraction of oil and gas in the North Sea, and even though energy experts are saying that's not going to be the solution. And interestingly enough, and in that case, maybe that is a positive, the business person I was talking about earlier, the one with the cafe, who is facing these extraordinary energy prices, he's actually now thinking of, okay, if I somehow get through this, I want to make sure we put solar panels on our roofs, because that will actually shield us from price shocks from the oil and gas sector. So if anything, then it's people themselves actually turning to renewables to become more independent.
So a rather more sober assessment there. Michael, the last word to you. What is the best and the worst case scenario for this winter?
Oh, well, I would say the worst case, I've already mentioned in passing, is a shutdown of gas supplies, a complete shutdown of gas supplies from Russia, which would even further escalate energy prices, increase the cost of living crisis. You have to see that the way we determine electricity prices, the marginal cost of producing electricity, the highest marginal cost determines the price. And at present, this is electricity created by gas. So Putin has some impact not only on the gas market, but also on electricity prices in the European Union. And that is, of course, that could be a very worst case scenario if he continues trying to blackmail us or it turns off the gas supplies completely. The best case would be, it would be a de-escalation of the conflict, of the war in Ukraine, some sensible negotiation, which would have to be initiated by Putin, and it doesn't look very likely, but we will see as time goes. That would be the best case, with energy prices coming back to normal, and oil, gas, and coal prices going back down. Having said that, I would also agree that if you want to look for positives in this situation, that the acceleration of the renewables industry is certainly something to mention. Also in Germany, many hurdles for renewable energy production have been taken down, so things will be sped up, and we will have even more electricity generation by solar and wind especially, but also maybe new technologies will be accelerated, or the development of new technologies will be accelerated. Maybe hydrocarbon production and the like, or synthetic fuels and things like that. They all have their downsides, but I think there will be quite some forceful technological innovation ahead of us.
Okay, a silver lining perhaps. And that's all we have time for from this business special about the cost of living crisis in Europe. Thank you so much to my guests, Emily Gordine and Michael Heise. If you've enjoyed the video, do hit like and subscribe, and do check out some of our other stuff on the DW News channel on YouTube. From me and the team, it's goodbye and take care.